I have people calling me saying that they have been subject to a hostile work environment. My boss is a jerk. My boss yelled.
So, in a nutshell, that was what drew you into employment law, advocating for survivors, sexual harassment, disability, or any form of discrimination, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. When we talk about discrimination and what people can do something about, I'm reminded calls I get every single week. I have people calling me saying that they have been subject to a hostile work environment. My boss is a jerk. My boss yelled at me, can't take it anymore. Unfortunately, the law only allows people to sue for very specific things. There's a lot of sayings in law, and one of them is that employment law is not a civility code. So your boss does have the right to be a jerk. And in fact, if you ask probably 99% of employees, if you say, would you say your boss is a jerk? They would say, does a bear poop in the woods? Is the Pope Catholic? The responses would flow. Now, can you sue for that? That's a completely different story, and you can't. So the whole concept, and people may have heard it before globally, outside of the United States, a hostile work environment, it's a misnomer. It is only hostile when it is due to one of the protected classes. Protected classes, and I imagine you've heard of those protected classes:
Yeah.
race, religion, gender, disability, sexual orientation, national origin, citizenship, age, pregnancy. Some states have parental, marital. But if it doesn't fall within one of those categories, if your boss is just coming in and saying, I can't believe this work done, what's wrong with you, and making you cry, I don't think you're going to have a case there.
Because it's not one of the protected classes. So,
Exactly.
thank you for that. In your experience, what are the most common forms of sexual harassment or employment discrimination that people underestimate or normalize?
They underestimate or normalize. There are generally two forms of sexual harassment. The first form of sexual harassment is quid pro quo. Quid pro quo, Latin, this for that. It's an exchange. Hey, you give me sex, I'll give you job, or I'll give you a raise, or I'll give you good hours. Or conversely, you give me sex, or I'm going to fire you, or I'm going to take retaliatory action against you. So that is a form of sexual harassment that happens very often, and very often people don't even realize it's happening until they're actually in it and it's too late for them. And I'll explain that in a second. The second form of sexual harassment is hostile work environment in form of sexual harassment. It's when your boss engages in, and there's like a technical definition, unwanted comments or conduct of a sexual nature that have the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with the person's work environment. That could be as straightforward as, wow, your breasts look amazingly hot today. Could you imagine? Now, remember, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've handled thousands of cases, and every single thing that I'm mentioning, yes, I've seen, I've heard, and I think one of the cases that I had was, your tits be popping, was the expression that was used in that case. Yes, I know. So that would be comments of a sexual nature. Or it could be, oh my God, you, whatever. I mean, I can go on. But then the conduct of a sexual nature can be touching. It could be, oh, you look tense, let me give you a massage. Or brushing up in kitchens, for example. There's only a small space and people have to walk by. And a male server, let's say, always walks by the woman and presses his genitalia against her butt and holds it there for a while. That's an example. So those are the two forms of sexual harassment that we see that often get underestimated depending on where it was, how far it went. But I want to get back to the quid pro quo sexual harassment, that it's almost like, if you heard the story of a frog who gets boiled to death, if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, they'll jump out.
Yeah.
If you put a frog in just water on a stove and every minute increase the temperature 1 degree, in an hour you've got a boiled frog, because they just don't realize what's happening to them. So think about a secretary, for example, an assistant whose boss says, "Hey, Mary, what do you say we grab drinks tonight and let's go out and just decompress?" "Well, I can't. I've got to get home after work. I'm really not able to, but thank you anyway. Here's a whole bunch of work. Make sure that I get it done. Make sure you get it done by tomorrow morning. No excuses." Then the next week, "Hey, Mary, you want to go out for a drink?" "No, thank you anyway. I have other plans." "Mary, the time I gave you before all that work, you did it wrong. I want you to do it again. It was horrible. And I'm writing you up. It's going in your HR file." The next week, "Hey, Mary, you want to go out for a drink?" That's they slowly get groomed or forced into this thing that they didn't want to be involved in, and they're just trying to put their head down and not be bothered, and they're entitled to do that. But that's a common situation.
That's an obsession, as far as I'm concerned, from the boss. So, what myths about workplace abuse or retaliation most harm survivors seeking justice?
So there's several myths. So people think it's got to be physical to count. "I haven't been sexually harassed. He only says things to me." How demoralizing is it? How degrading is it for man, woman to go into work and have to every day be harassed with these comments? And it could be a racial comment. It could be a religious comment. It could be a sexual comment. And it doesn't have to just be touching or being sexually assaulted. You could be sexually harassed with words. And people often think that, oh, it only happened once. That's not true. One instance could be absolutely enough. There was a famous case involving President Bill Clinton, where, do you remember this?
Yes.
Where Paula Jones accused him of sexual harassment, and the allegation was, he says, "Paula, I want you to come to my hotel room. We have a few things to discuss." Number one, if your boss is saying, "Come to my hotel room," that immediately should set up an alert and make every excuse in the book not to go there. But if you do feel so compelled and you do go, you still have a right not to be sexually harassed once you get there. So the allegation was, as soon as she went in, he dropped his pants, exposed his penis, and said something to the effect of, "Suck it." And you know what? One time, that's enough. If a person was actually touched, that's enough. And it also depends on the jurisdiction that you're in, because, for example, there is no such thing as a severe or pervasive standard when measuring the amount of harassment, the level of harassment. It is simply, did harassment occur, and was it beyond what's known as a petty slight or trivial inconvenience? That would be another myth, is human resources will protect you. I apologize for my profanity, but that's bullshit. Human resources will not protect you. Their job is to protect the company. Sometimes you have to notify them and put them on notice, but they don't work for you. They work for keeping the company flush with money, avoiding lawsuits, and they want you to think that you have no case and that there could be the worst harassment ever. And I wouldn't be surprised if they say that we didn't find anything substantial in your complaint. And another thing is, the last myth I'd like to mention is that you'll never work again if you do make a claim. You'll never be able to sue. Your name will be out there. I would say a huge, substantial portion of my caseload is settling without anything ever becoming public. Most of the cases that I handle are settled privately, confidentially, and the person doesn't have to have their name ever come out. In fact, the law provides for a mechanism that even if it does go public, you can sue as a John or Jane Doe, anonymous, and then you can proceed with your case again without anything being public. Now, that being said, some people want to scream from the top of the mountain what happened to them, and I honor them. And let's do it. Let's, to the extent appropriate, let's have a press release. Let's file this complaint, send it to the newspapers, or let's just move forward with our lawsuit and not be scared that it's public. There's a lot to be said for somebody who does want to do that, but I can understand why someone would be concerned about their case being public and why maybe an employer may not want to hire them afterwards. But just to understand, there are mechanisms in place. Many cases settle privately, confidentially beforehand. Employers want it to be confidential. They don't want to be splashed all over publicly either. And if it does move forward, very often it could be a John Doe or a Jane Doe. And lastly, if anybody ever discriminates against you because you had a lawsuit in the past, that's illegal as well.
Be safe and be positive. And don't forget to check out our social media handles. Thank you. Bye for now.